Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack. I'm a certified life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I want you to know that no matter your season or circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life. And I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 51, entitled What's Next with Kelly Falcone. I am excited to share this conversation that I had recently with my friend and fellow life coach, Kelly Falcone. She and I have been able to be in coaching cohorts over the last year and have been able to learn together and learn from each other. She is very knowledgeable and has such a great perspective on things. And she too is a woman of faith who is navigating this mid-season of life. Kelly Falcone is passionate about supporting and empowering moms as they figure out what's next in midlife and navigate choices relating to their careers, relationships, and health. Inspired by her own personal transformation after hiring a coach and learning about managing her mind, she decided to train with the Life Coach School and start her own coaching practice. Kelly is a former human resource recruiter, professional career counselor, and fitness health coach. When not running her life coaching business, she loves reading personal development books, chilling out with a sci-fi movie, leading her church's parish council, getting her Zen on in a yoga class, or walking her adorable senior pup around the neighborhood. So here is my conversation with Kelly Falcone.
Hello, everyone. As Jill said, I am Kelly Falcone, and I am a career and life coach for moms, helping them figure out what's next for them with more clarity and confidence. So how did I get there? How did I end up in these cohorts with Jill and this coaching arena? So I was always interested in how people tick and how they think and the brain. And I actually started as an undergrad as a psychology major. And then I got into the lab and the sciencey stuff and the teaching the pigeon to peck on the little thing in the cage to get the pellet and the whole, Pavlovian response. And I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So I actually switched my major to communications and went into advertising. But kind of fell into it, really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger, but I always every time something came up in my job where I was mentoring people or helping people figure out what was going on with their careers, I would get excited. And as I sort of rose in my career, that was more important and more enjoyable to me to mentor the people that were working with me than even to do the work that I was doing for my clients. So an opportunity opened up in human resources, which I thought was going to be more the psychology type thing. So I moved over to that. And there was some aspect of that, but it was also very much running the business and unfortunately layoffs and cost cutting and other things and a little disheartening. So I decided I wanted to use my business experience, but kind of go back into that psychology arena. And I went back to grad school and got a master's in counseling with the goal of working as a collegiate career counselor. I had loved being in campus activities when I was in college, and I always wanted to work in a college activities office or administration or something like that. So Career Center was a good connection for that, using that HR and that business background. So I did that. And while I was in grad school, I had my daughter, who's now 18 and getting ready to go off to college in less than a year now. And I had a contract position at a local university when she was younger. And I realized I didn't want to work full time in this role. And my daughter also had some medical challenges when she was younger, and I wanted to be present and be there for the therapies and the doctor's appointments and all of that. So I kind of cobbled together this hybrid schedule of, I worked in a contract position at a local university. I also made a connection with someone who had a similar career path to mine with advertising and human resources, who had started his own business, writing resumes and doing career coaching for people over the phone. He worked out of Chicago, so I was one of his remote people because he worked with people who were former HR people. So I did that for a while. And then life happens, and I had 2 sick parents that I was a primary caregiver for at the same time, and a first grader. And it was getting a little challenging to be on late night phone calls with the West Coast with helping a C-level executive rewrite his resume. And so I did a really dramatic pivot and actually became a fitness instructor. I was thinking about what could I do, something that I was interested in and passionate about, but could fit my schedule at the time. So I taught for about 5 or 6 years. I taught group fitness classes, and I could bring my daughter with me. I could schedule my parents' doctor's appointments around, my teaching schedule and all of that. And you'll start to notice a theme. There is a theme of, I think I was already doing coaching to some extent through a lot of these jobs. So obviously when I was mentoring people when I was in corporate, and when I worked in human resources, I did a lot of employee relations work, which could be considered like coaching. Being a group fitness instructor is very much health and fitness coaching. Yes. Yeah. So I had actually wanted to become a health coach. I had decided. I'd watched my parents get sick. And so I got a health coaching certification, but then I had a really difficult time starting my business and getting it's, as a fellow entrepreneur, it's hard sometimes to just get that motivation. So anyway, I finally got to the point where I decided I wanted to do this, and I wanted to kind of bring in my career background. So I hired a coach that I found online through a Facebook ad, through a webinar that she did. And I just absolutely loved her. Her whole philosophy was how to build a business while during your kids' like school hours and really dialing in to that time period so you could build a business within that 25-hour work week. And that really appealed to me. And so then she started talking about all these different concepts like the model and these things that I had never heard of before, which I found out later were concepts taught by Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School, and she had been a student of Brooke's. And so then I discovered that. And once I got into that, I joined their scholars program. And that was during the pandemic. And I had a lot of anxiety during the pandemic, as my daughter did, and I was doing online therapy at the same time as I was in scholars. And in the scholars program at the Life Coach School, you also get a coaching session every week. I was getting more benefit from the coaching than I was from the therapy. And this is from someone who has a master's degree in counseling. So I was like, this is interesting. So that's when I decided to go certify because I said, if this is helping me this much, wow, what could I do if I have these tools? So that's how I sort of ended up where I'm at now, where I went through that program and I've continued my training. You and I have been in programs together, and I really decided I wanted to work with women. And then I narrowed that even further to primarily moms and just with transitions, in particular with their careers and their lives and things like that. So that's where I'm at.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that stood out to me, and it wasn't necessarily something you said, but it was like this idea popped into my head about just how, as women, we are so amazing. We are so flexible, right? We're adaptable. Like that was kind of like this overall theme. Like we have these different seasons in our life and we adapt. We find what works and we make shifts and changes all the time. And so it's interesting to me how adaptable we are. However, those transitions can be challenging at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. And I think none of them were easy. I think about, it took me a year after I certified as a fitness instructor before I got a job, an entire year of getting rejected over and over again, of going and teaching parts of classes and having people walk out, all these different things that happened. And I realized that so many women, one of the challenges that they have is this confidence. If they want to do something different, or they want to make a pivot or a shift or a change in their life, or they need to, because they're juggling other things. They're juggling taking care of parents or kids or themselves or whatever is happening in their life. And I want to be sort of help be a GPS for them and helping them find their way. Because I think a lot of times people get overwhelmed and they just don't know where to go, and they don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
And it is possible. I've done it in I've changed my career in many different ways, and I've been able to still have that fulfillment while also balancing things in my personal life. And it's totally possible to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of that I've see in coaching, right? Is not only as a coach, but I think as a woman, we can have that balance in our life. We can create this life we love. It doesn't mean, I think sometimes we get caught up on the idea of balance being equal time or what, like our times can feel out of balance, but sometimes balance does mean we spend more time in one area versus another. That is where the balance is.
Absolutely. I think that's a secret that a lot of people don't know. You're right. I think people think of balance as having it all, be on this scale in some way. But a perfect example in my own life is, I mentioned I have a high school senior and she's my only child. And I made the conscious decision this fall to scale back on my business in order to be fully present for all of these different things that were happening in her life, for her senior activities and helping her with college applications and those sorts of things. And I made that decision very deliberately and very consciously, and recognized that there's going to be a time where I'm going to ramp back up with what I'm working on. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And the freedom to make it look and be what is best for you in that current season.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to get, I think you touched on this, easy to become overwhelmed in a season change. Because we're not sure how to navigate it because we've never done that season before. And so sometimes that can seem very overwhelming, but that is why I think the tools that you and I teach our clients is so beneficial, because it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be, and nothing's wrong with that. But if you're ready to do something different and live from a different emotion than overwhelm all the time, it's totally possible to create that for yourself.
Absolutely. To put on my health coach hat for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
As someone who's on the other side of menopause now, I think a challenge for me has been, there are a lot of physical changes that happen to emotional things and mental things that happen. And it's interesting, they compare a lot to, being a teenager. So I'm watching my daughter go through some of this hormonal stuff as she, becomes a young adult. And then I'm going through similar things too. And just being able to, my coach training enabled me to hold that space for myself and recognize that this was normal and okay to be going through this. And it was okay to feel a little bit anxious or overwhelmed or whatever the feelings were that were coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just know that it's fine. It's going to be fine. And when the time is right, you can shift to something different.
Yes. And you will evolve.
You will.
I feel like, it's this, whether it's being in a cocoon and becoming a butterfly is, an example I use quite often, or just this, I think, Brene Brown calls it the unraveling. And then I think about it like loosely re-raveling in a different way, or, I've heard it, like your brain rewiring almost as you go through, different phases in your life physically with the different seasons in your life.
Yeah.
So I like when I think of it in that way, that this is normal and it's supposed to feel a little bit odd and uncomfortable, and it's going to be awesome on the other side. It's a little easier.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something too. I think in this season, we're navigating different things physically, mentally, emotionally in this older season, this mid-season of life. It's what comes with it.
Oh, absolutely. And there's joy, but there's also I've been doing workshops on transition with women in midlife recently, and a big thing that comes up is grief. And I don't think people even realize that's what they're experiencing until they start talking about it. And it's not just, there's the grief of, your children going off to college and that whole transition. And there's the grief of the changes in your physical attributes or changes in relationships or whatever. But it's also like the grief of your old self, and evolving into something new. There is some like letting go process too. And that's again, like to be, I love being, helping women in groups and facilitating groups, because it's so powerful, because most women that I talk to one-on-one will think, I'm the only one going through this, I'm the only one experiencing this. Whereas when you're in a group and you realize that people are having their own unique experience, but there's a lot of commonality and similarities, it feels more normal.
I think if that's one message we can send, is that it's totally normal to struggle and to, like you said, grieve the loss of a season, right? Like,
yes.
Right. Because we're used to the season we're in, and that transition, even though there's wonderful things ahead, there's pieces of the past season that I love that you put grief to it, that's what you called it. Because I think oftentimes you're right, that women don't understand that is really a large part that's happening for them, because it's change. It's different than what they once knew.
Yes. And we're taught as coaches to help our clients with expressing and feeling their emotions and processing their emotions. But we're not necessarily taught that in society. So before I became a coach, I did this, and I certainly see it in my clients and in the groups that I run, that we try to resist the grief. I'm not supposed to feel sad. I'm supposed to feel happy. Another fellow coach of ours, who's an empty nest coach, I just saw a post today. She was talking about this idea of, we get all these books and this information on how to raise children, what to do in the baby years and the toddler years and the teen years. But then when they turn 18, there's like nothing, right? It's like, how do we parent adults, and how do we make this transition? And so recognizing that, yes, it's grief, and it's okay to feel that. And feeling that will help you transition to this next.
It actually is the pathway to the next season.
Yes.
To move through those things actually helps you move to, that next season, that next phase of life, from a really empowered way, instead of we're going to hit the season either embracing it or kicking and screaming, because it's coming.
I love that. The idea of empowered, though. Yeah, but you're right. We're going.
And so
you have a choice of, do you want to go in overwhelm and confusion and holding, with a tight grip and pushing away the grief, or do you want to go empowered and say, I'm stepping into this?
And I'm going to miss this, but what else is possible? What else is out there? And I loved how you reference that other coach, because that's something that I have thought a lot about. It's like, for me personally, and I've talked about this before, this idea of, the first half of our life plan is kind of spelled out for us. I mean, they may vary a little bit, but for me, and in my circle of friends and people I know, it's, you grow up, you go to school, you get married, you have kids, you raise them, and it's all beautiful. And then no one tells you. And then when you hit that phase, your parents are old, they're sick, and they're dying. And you're like, oh, So this is what's next. Like there's this big gap in between what else is possible. And so I just think, especially as women in our age, and just as we're helping women, is to help them see that they get to write that second half, that those other chapters are free game. We can make them whatever we want. And it isn't the end. It's actually a new beginning in so many ways.
Yes, it's stepping into themselves. I think when you said that, what came up for me with it was this idea of like rediscovering yourself at this phase of life. I often hear things from women such as, I don't know what happened. I lost myself, in parenthood or in caregiving, or, I just in just the craziness of motherhood and working mom life and all of that. You're likely someone different too.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like rediscovering who you are now and what you want now.
Yeah.
Versus where you were before. And it can be scary, but it can also be really fun.
Another thing that happens for us as women is we start to define ourselves by the roles we play. The things we do become our identity. And not that we don't want those things in our lives. Of course, like you and I were mothers. We chose that. We wanted to be mothers. We wanted to be a wife. We wanted to do these things. So it's not from a place of wishing it was different, but we've put our whole souls, our whole selves into caring for these other people. And if you're a working mom too, you're putting part of yourself there. And so it's so easy to start to define ourselves as these roles instead of who really am I? Who is Jill? Who is Kelly?
That's a very hard question for most people to answer.
Yeah.
Who am I? I've started to answer it that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, which is, part, if you're in personal development or you're a spiritual person like that, some people are kind of like, what,
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the things that's happening for me in this phase of my life is connecting more deeply with my spirituality. I am a Catholic. I just volunteered to help the pastor of my parish start a new parish advisory council, and I also belong to an interdenominational women's spirituality group where we just kind of explore, again, finding that spiritual core and how that helps us in navigating our life and connecting with other people and all of that. And while I practiced religion when I was younger and I, explored different things, I feel like at this phase of my life, there's a deeper connection there too. So that there's an opportunity there also. Another facet of your life.
Yeah. I think that's such an important point. We have different faiths, but we both have religion in our life. And I would say that is a core belief of mine as well, is that, I personally believe that we are all children of God. And that is a huge identity that I believe in. And when we can embrace that idea of that we are this divine, we really are all divine. We were created in God's image. And so we are 100% worthy, valuable, and loved because we were created by somebody great.
Yes.
All powerful. Right. And so I think that is a key piece, is when we can reconnect and rediscover who we are and that piece is part of it, there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of power because then we aren't looking outside of ourselves for approval and validation and acceptance. It's something that comes from within because we have that understanding.
We have that understanding and we recognize that connection we have to God. One of the topics that came up in my women's spirituality group, we were talking about this idea of you can feel lonely when you get older, if your kids are going off to school or, if a relationship ends, which happens quite often to people in midlife, and having that realization that you really truly are never alone because you have God in your life and because you have that connection to him and you have that greater connection to humanity. when we talked about that, it made me feel held. It made me feel, not alone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I think that's powerful in of itself, is just feeling that connection to God. And no matter our season, no matter our circumstance, we are never alone. Yeah, it's beautiful. So as you work with women and in these groups, and we may have touched on that as we've talked, but is there an area where that you see the biggest struggle? Is it that they've lost connection with themselves, or do you see other things that
that
women are
is, and
struggling
what
with?
it's showing up as lack of self-confidence. That's the thing that I see all the time with my individual clients, and then again with some of these groups that I've just recently started doing with a local women's co-working, co-learning space near me in New Jersey. And I live in Northern New Jersey, by the way. I don't think I said that in the beginning. Yes, it's the idea that, first of all, I don't even know what I want comes up. They're blocked because they've been living their life for so long of, this is what I'm supposed to do. You're talking about like the path that we're on, and not that we didn't choose that, to get married, have kids, have a career, whatever, but you kind of you map out your life, and now you're not really sure what you want as your life is evolving and changing. So getting back in touch with what that is, and then beginning the belief process that you can actually accomplish that.
Yeah.
Most of the women that I work with, when I first start working with them, do not believe that they can change careers or go back to work if they've been at home for a while, or affect the change that they want to. They don't believe that yet. So that's a lot of the work that we do, is just beginning to do the process of believing that it's possible.
Yeah. I love that. I think I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen in myself, even individually, is just this opening up of possibility. Because I remember at this specific point in time when my youngest was going into her senior year, and I had been a stay-at-home mom for 28 years, right? And I'd done some things on the side, but I just remember like everything felt so small. I was fulfilled in my family, but individually, I was like, what is even like possible wouldn't even be a word I'd use. And now on this side of it, just opening up and having so much fun in this season of life, the word possibility is one I use all the time, because it's beautiful. Like there is so much possibility, but in that moment, and I can actually picture me on my walk feeling so small and just wondering like, what's even in store for me? What did I even have to offer?
Probably didn't imagine that you'd be.
No, I had no idea
where you are now.
No. And people will ask me all the time, like, so how's your coaching business? Like, how's it going? And I'm just like, it's so fun. I am having so much fun in this season of life because I've discovered who I was to a different level. Like I always underneath, right? We have that foundation that we grew up with, but at this season, I'm rediscovering, redeveloping it. And so it's just, it's beautiful. And it's like, every time that comes out of my mouth, I'm like, it's awesome. I'm having so much fun. And I think it takes people back a little bit, like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times we don't associate work with fun.
Yeah.
And as a career coach, I would like to flip that. I actually, even if you don't think, when people come to me and they're thinking about leaving their job, the first thing we talk about is how can you be happier at your current job?
Yeah.
Which blows people's minds, but really, then when you can look at things from a different perspective, you can still choose to leave, but you're leaving from a different place, and you're also leaving, your mind is clearer and your decision making is better. When you're in a panic that I need to leave, you're not going to make the best decision where you go next.
Yeah.
So quite often when someone is looking to change careers, we work first on, well, how can you be happier where you are right now?
That's so beautiful, because I think that fits into what I work. I'm not necessarily with career, but just transitions in this midseason, right? And embracing what is. But I think that, how can you be happy in your current season
Mhm.
without wishing it was different or changing people or whatever? Like, you can be happy right now and clean up your thinking and your beliefs to a place that allows you to choose different if you want.
And what occurred to me as you were saying that was why I think coaching can be such a valuable place for people is if you look to the outside world, you probably experience this, I do too. There can be a lot of negativity and a lot of let's all be miserable together. I mean, I think both you and I being coaches, we probably move in circles that are involved in personal development. I tend to gravitate towards that, but I am in other situations where it's almost the misery loves company sort of idea. And to have someone be in a space where it's not that we're looking at possibility, we're looking at the idea that, oh, wait, maybe I could find happiness here now. That's an option for me.
Yeah.
That's sort of a new idea for a lot of people, but being in a space where you are supported and the person on the other side of the desk or the other side of the computer believes that this is possible for you. A lot of my clients, I'm one of the only people in their life that believes that they can do this. They're not getting the support from other places.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a refuge.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Because that's the thing. Like when I'm coaching someone, it's just about cheering them on, right? Questioning some of their beliefs and looking at them and showing them maybe there's another way to think of this, but 100% confident in their ability to create something that they love in their life in this season that they're at. Yeah.
And you can plant that seed. You can hold the confidence for them until the seed sprouts with them.
I love that. So as you do workshops and you work with clients, you teach different tools. We teach similar tools. Is there one thing that you could leave with listeners that they could use today that maybe helps them lean into confidence or kind of maybe embrace the season that they're at and this transition? Like, is there something that you would love to share, a tool, a tip that they could use today to help them?
Be your own BFF, be your own best friend by having compassion for yourself as you go through all of this. As a recovering type A perfectionist, this was a very strange idea to me when I started exploring it about 1.5 years ago. I actually had someone ask me to do a workshop on self-compassion. And I said, I'm all about self-criticism. I can tell you all about that, but what? So I started researching it. There's a professor, Dr. Kristen Neff out of University of Texas, who's considered like one of the leading experts on self-compassion, which is compassion turned inward. And as I started exploring it more and as I started practicing it and as I started working with my clients, I feel like that's sort of a secret weapon or a secret thing in the background that can really help you with so many different things. If you have compassion for yourself, when you are struggling, it's easier. When you do make a mistake or you're going to interview for a job and it's not going to work out, or you're going to try this and it's not going to work out, or you're going to feel, grief over your child leaving for college or whatever the circumstance, but having compassion for yourself that you're a human being, it's normal to have these experiences. It's normal to have these emotions and that you are your own BFF. And the way that I do it in presentations and workshops is I tell people, you have your inner critic. We all know who she is, or your inner mean girl. From think of the movie Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Telling you can't do this or you've done it wrong or whatever. To turn up the volume. Think about if your best friend, someone who you love and would do anything for, came to you with your exact problem. You wouldn't say to her, well, buck up and do this, or you're not doing it right, or that's silly. You would be supportive. You would say things like, that must be difficult. You're doing a great job. You're, a warm, loving mother. You would say, start saying those things to yourself. That is like practicing that over time. It gets easier and easier to do. And it's made a dramatic difference in my own life, how I show up in my relationships, how I show up even in my business. When I struggle with something, I have compassion for myself. When that happens. Not all the time, but it's definitely getting there. Yeah.
But it happens more often, right? We're still going to have, I think it's important to recognize we're still going to have moments, and there are moments that we're hard on ourselves. Or maybe we say something that we wouldn't really like to say, we wouldn't say to anybody else, but we've said it to ourselves, right? But those are moments when we show up that way. And with this self-compassion, that's still going to happen, but less often. And I find that I catch myself wanting to go to some criticism because we're all our worst critic. And I find like I may say a sentence and then I go, no, it's not how I'm going to be. It's not how I'm going to be. This is just information. I've learned from this experience. Now what? Right. And so I think that is such a huge thing, Kelly, to share, because self-compassion also allows us to be more compassionate outwardly. And if we aren't compassionate towards ourselves, how do we expect to be? I mean, I think we all are nicer to people outside of us than ourselves, but I think there's a part of us that holds back a little and can go to criticism and judgment when we're doing that for ourselves. I think those things can come a little easier. And so by fostering self-compassion, we're actually inviting more compassion to those in our life.
Absolutely. And I also feel like for those other type A's that might be listening in, for me, I actually have become more productive by being self-compassionate. Yes. And it sounds counterintuitive. And I spent so much of my life beating myself up if I didn't do something right, or correcting myself, or, achieve. And stepping into self-compassion, it gives me that space. So rather than throwing my hands in the air or walking away, I continue to show up imperfectly. So I get more done. I'm putting more out in the world. I'm trying to serve, other women in what I do. And I think that enables me to do that more.
Yeah. That's a beautiful point. Mm-hmm. And it isn't about getting it perfectly. I thought today you and we had a discussion in one of our groups that really stuck with me. And I'm like, I got to do a podcast on this. So I'll probably explore this idea further. But just this idea it was the idea of inconsistency versus consistency. Mm-hmm. And so many people have the narrative that I'm just not consistent. We want to try new things. And we have this idea that we're not consistent, except we are consistent in being inconsistent. It's just interesting. It's like, no, we can flip that on its head. What are we being consistent in? What poor behavior, things that we don't really like, or that we are being consistent in, that is evidence that we have total ability to be consistent, even if it is imperfectly. We can just be humans taking one step forward. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency.
Yes. If I can be consistent in eating my part of a dark chocolate bar after dinner every night, I can also be consistent with getting up and meditating.
Right.
Do both of those things, right?
Right. Or just, I'm on a new health season, right? And so I'm being more conscientious. And it was like, I can be consistent in checking in with myself if I'm really hungry. Am I really hungry? I'm paying attention to what hunger feels like for me more consistently, because I was pretty consistent at not checking in with how hungry I was when I ate. So it's just interesting. Yeah. So compassion for ourselves it's more powerful than I think people realize.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So beautiful. Well, Kelly, it has been so fun.
Oh, I always love to hear. Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
I always love to hear your input and your thoughts. You're just very well, you think things through and are very articulate. And so I love learning from you. So I just thank you again for being here.
Oh, thank you. And I hope that we've given some new ideas to women going through seasons of their life, that they have different choices and they do have the power to move in the direction they want to.
Yes. So before I forget, where can people find you? I meant to ask you that.
Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. Not too many people. Facebook is, I don't know. It depends on who you are. Most people follow me on LinkedIn, which is Kelly Falcone Coaching. KellyFalconeCoaching.com is my website.
Awesome. And you are on Instagram too, right?
Yeah. Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So awesome. So thank you again. And hopefully this isn't the last collaboration, right?
Sounds great to me. All right. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, I would love it if you would share it with your friends and family and leave me a rating and review. If you'd like to learn more about what life coaching is, please schedule a free discovery call with me where we can work together through something that's causing you a problem. Just go to my website, seasons-coaching.com, and you can also find information about my Seasons of Joy one-on-one coaching program and my Seasons of Joy community. Have a joyful week, and I'll see you next time.